Good evening and welcome to the Job Search Solution, the radio program where we talk about looking for a job, changing jobs, changing careers, hiring. And as always, we begin with a prayer. Dear God, grant us thy peace and thy mercy, thy will be done. And in this session, I want to talk about probably one of the most elemental issues that candidates looking for a job overlook. One of the most elemental issues that is absolutely necessary, but gets so messed up you can't even imagine. And that has to do with you got to know what you're selling to a prospective employer. Next week, we'll get to the questions that employers need to be asking. But this week, we're going to be talking about, do you know as a candidate what you're selling? I'd say 75% of the candidates that I talk to say, well, I'm just a good worker. Well, I'm a good worker. I'm just a really good worker. They go into an interview, they don't know exactly what the job is that they are applying for. They look up something online or something gets sent to them where it says good communication and written skills. I mean, junk. So the first thing you got to know if you're a candidate is exactly what you are applying for and what is the hiring authority looking for in a candidate. And then you need to know exactly what you are selling. Selling the idea that I'm just a good worker, that doesn't get anywhere. You've got to be able to prove you're a good worker. And you've got to be able to prove you're a good worker with facts and figures and demonstrations of where you've been a good worker in quantitative and qualitative manners. We say around here all the time that stories sell and numbers tell. You got to have good stories about how you are a good worker. Not just I outperformed everybody. What did you do? What are some of the stories in your previous employment that prove you are a good worker? Anytime you can quantify your abilities with numbers. Now, the salespeople, that's pretty clear. But even in other kinds of positions, production management, plant management, controllers, accounting and finance, anytime you can quantify what your performance has been, then you're going to be in good shape. And you need to put those numbers down and go over them in the interviewing situation. You've got to come up with facts. Any kind of accolades that you've gotten, what I call collateral materials, any kind of reviews that you've had in the past, any kind of commendations that you received, any kind of awards. I've known people that come up with what I call brag books. They have a whole book of written accolades that they've received from customers, from their bosses, from contests that they might have won. Anything that proves I have been a good worker in the past, and then therefore, and don't think that you have to come up with it implies. You can't say that it implies I'm going to be a good worker for you. You need to say, I've been a good worker in the past. Here are the facts that prove that I have been a good worker. Therefore, I'm going to be a good worker for you. You have to make that transition for a prospective employer. You need to be able to do this for every job that you've ever had, all the way back to the beginning of your career. It doesn't have to be long presentations about those jobs, but you have to have a presentation about every job you've had, coming up with as many stories, facts, and figures, keeping them short and to the point that prove I am a good worker. I am selling you the idea that I have been a good worker in the past, and I'm going to be a good worker for you. You cannot, under any circumstances, assume that a hiring authority is going to get and understand that you're a good worker. They're not. They're comparing you with 14 other candidates that they are interviewing. And they're comparing you and your skills to those 14 other people. You just walk in and sit down and say, well, I'm a good worker. When do I start? You won't get very far. Most candidates don't know this. They think, well, I've been a good worker in the past. Can't you tell that from my resume? No, they can't tell that from your resume. You need to have as many facts and figures on your resume as you possibly can. Can't very well tell stories on your resume, but you can tell stories in the interview. They need to be short, to the point, and they need to be able to prove that you have been a good employee in the past, and therefore you're going to be a good employee for them. If one or two of your jobs are specific and germane to the job that you are interviewing for, then emphasize those. Also, then by doing that, you also want to come up with other people that can testify that you have been a success. Good references really, really help. That's another discussion in another presentation, but you got to have other people that say, you know, Tony has been a good worker before. He was a good worker for me. He will therefore be a good worker for you. So the bottom line is you need to know what you're selling, and then you need to know how to sell it. And it needs to be factual, to the point, specific, and germane to the interview that you're on. All right, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. This is Tony Bashara with the Job Search Solution.